Welcome to Spotlight. I'm your host, Amitha. Join us weekly to get inspired by success stories brought to us by our guests. We often are dependent on our government officials to create a progressive, safe society to live in. If that official has been part of the community, then the changes are more relevant. Today, we will be talking to an inspirational government official who is bringing about changes in the town of Whitby. Let's welcome to our show Regional Councillor and Deputy Mayor, Mr. Steve Yamada. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. Now, you do have an interesting background up until the point where you are Deputy Mayor today. So let's just start off a little bit talking about your growing up and your education thus far.
Well, thank you, Amitha. I grew up in the city of Toronto. My parents were working class folks. My dad was a teacher. My mother was a nurse. And later she put her career on hold, I think, to really do some important work. And that was to raise myself, my brother, and my sister. And, I think learning those important values of family, and learning those important values of integrity at a young age really sort of started me on that direction of where I wanted to go in helping within my community and being someone who helps and works with others. I went to Runnymede Collegiate out in the West End. Graduated from there and had an interest in political science. I had a teacher who was very political, and I got interested and took the introduction to political studies and thought, this is something I want to do at university. So when I left high school, I went to York and did political science and history, because I really think it's important to understand the past and understand where we come from and what our society was like. So, we're able to make better judgments and not repeat some of the errors of the past. So did that, got an interest, still the interest was there. So I ran for the York Federation of Students. For Vice President of External Affairs, and I wasn't successful the first time. But what I experienced from that was an opportunity to learn about working a campaign, running a campaign, and where my mistakes were, so that if I decided to do it again in the future, we'd have a better chance of being successful, which I did. And I had a year on the York Federation of Students. And this was around the time that Ernie Eves was running for the leadership of the Ontario PC party. And there was that changeover in leadership with the Ontario government. So we lobbied for an income contingent loan repayment plan. We felt that, hammering students with an X amount that they have to pay back if they're not working or if they're not making a lot of money, I think was challenging for students. So we felt that an income contingent loan repayment plan, something that was connected to their income, would allow them to start paying a little bit back. We felt that was fair. There were a couple of leadership candidates who took it on, but ultimately, it wasn't a successful policy that Mr. Eves wanted to take on. So we kept working. And at the end of the day, I felt the most important way to be an agent of change is to be part of government. So after I graduated from York University, I went to work for the Honorable Brenda Elliott, who at the time was the Minister of Community, Family and Children's Services. Worked in her office and learned how a ministry office worked, and quite frankly, the good work that they were doing in terms of helping families and helping vulnerable folks. I then went to work for the Honorable David Tabochi, who was the chair of the Management Board of Cabinet, which is now the Treasury Board. And he was the Minister of Culture as well. So what really was important for me was to work for someone who was the first Japanese Canadian Ontario Cabinet Minister, MPP. And that being part Japanese myself, showed that, through that hard work, you can make it to places of influence and you can make it to places of power and to, in the end, really help your community. Because I think no matter what political stripe you might be part of or belong to, I think you get into politics and you get into government, no matter what level, is to help people and to help society. So I was very proud to work for Minister Tabochi. But in 2003, the government failed to get reelected, and a lot of us political staffers were out of work. So for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had seen some people who were in their mid to late 50s who had just lost their job. And I thought to myself, if I get back into politics, I need to have a solid career behind me. And talking to my old man, he said, do you like working with kids? And I said, I really don't know. And now that I had some time that I was gainfully unemployed, I went and volunteered in a school. And I really enjoyed doing that. And so that led to going to the University of Toronto, doing the Bachelor of Education program, and then getting into my current role as a teacher with the Toronto District School Board.
Amazing journey, and everything so inspirational because you always were analyzing the situation around you and you didn't just stop when you fail, like you said, say in the beginning. You just used it to get better to the next round and keep going. That's amazing. And again, we hear that passion within you about giving back to the community at every level and in every sense of the word. So it's great, and the town of Whitby is blessed to have you as regional councillor and deputy mayor. So we're going to learn more about that, but before that, it's time for a short break. Welcome back to Spotlight. We are talking to Regional Councillor and Deputy Mayor, Mr. Steve Yamada. So, Councillor, this is great. You have given us an idea about how your career has come up thus far with all the inspiration you've had around you and the hard work you've put into it. And we left off you talking about how you became a teacher, and you are a teacher. Once a teacher, always a teacher. Thank you so much for giving back to the community. Tell us a little bit more.
So when I started volunteering, I saw the way, I was in a grade 4 or 5 class, and I just saw the way the children were really engaged. And when I left the first day of volunteering, I said, I really want to do this. I really think it's something that I'll have fun doing, because I think whatever you do as a career, you've got to have fun doing it, or you're not going to enjoy working. So after the University of Toronto, there wasn't a lot of teaching jobs. So I started, doing supply teaching, doing long-term occasional jobs, and starting to take what I had learned in theory and turning it into practice. So getting to become a better teacher and grow as someone who can really move the children to where they want to be, and to inspire children. Because I think what I've learned as a teacher, the children have to be happy. If they're not happy, they're not going to want to learn. So I had an opportunity to work with a large range of children, from teaching children in gifted, from teaching children with learning disabilities and special education, from teaching children in kindergarten up into grade 8. So it's been a big span. What I really enjoyed most was teaching in inner city schools, because there are some children who don't have the opportunities and don't have that stable home life. And when they come to school, you're able to create that routine. You're able to create that sense of home and family for these children, because, when they leave school, they might be watching their younger siblings while the folks are out working. So, you really want to build that sense of community for the children so that they can succeed and they can be inspired to succeed as well.
Great. Yeah, building that sense of community and laying down the foundation, especially like you said, some of the disadvantaged kids. So it's
Mm-hmm.
great to have somebody like you, guide them. And that's exactly what you're doing in the political arena as well. So from teacher jumping into the political scene, tell us a little bit more about your journey before you became the East Ward councillor in 2014 and then regional council in 2018. I know there was a span in between. Tell us a little bit more.
When you get into politics, it never really leaves you. And I had built up a good network of friends, and whenever there was a campaign, I'd get sucked in. They'd say, "Come on, Steve, we need your help on this campaign." So I had worked on Nina Tangri's campaign back in 2004 when she was running for the Conservative Party out in Mississauga, Streetsville, now serving as MPP, and Nina's just fabulous. I'd done some campaigns out here in Ajax, helping Todd McCarthy, who was Jim Flaherty's ex-law partner, Christine Elliott's campaign, and so being able to be part of the elections, it was still a great interest for me. And I always said to myself, wherever we wind up living, that's where I want to run, because I want to be able to be part of the community and I want to be able to give back. So in 2014, I was sort of looking around. We were living in East Whitby at the time, and I thought, I'm going to give this a kick at the can, and hopefully, we'll be successful. If we're not, I think it will be a good starting point for me to give it a good kick at the can next time. So we ran a really good campaign and knocked on every single door, and we talked to a lot of residents about their concerns. And I'd ask them, I'd say, well, do you know who your councillor is by chance? And a lot of people didn't know. And I thought that's a problem, because municipal government is very intimate. If your garbage isn't picked up, if there's an issue with the tree on your property, or there's a pothole in your road, who do you call first? You call your local councillor. So I talk to folks about doing better in terms of communication with residents, and you'll hear from me not just at election time, but in between, so we can have those conversations. Because when you hear what residents' concerns are, I think you're better able to do your job, because you're able to bring those thoughts and you're able to bring those concerns to the table when you're talking about policy and making those decisions that are going to affect your community. So we were successful in 2014, and I really enjoyed my 4 years on council. So we, fought to keep taxes low, because affordability is something you hear time and time again. We were looking at turning Whitby from a place that people commute from to a place that people commute to. because Whitby being predominantly a bedroom community, a lot of people commute outside to Toronto. So we were looking at what can we do to build Whitby as a place where people want to invest in, where we can create jobs and ensure that we're growing our commercial and industrial tax base. So one of the big issues was technology, and still is. So we started supporting technology companies, giving them the space to grow in our downtown. 360 Insights is a big technology company here in Whitby, and decided to stay in Whitby. So 10 years ago, there were no technology jobs. This one company created 500. So what we've done on top of that is working with the technology companies here in Whitby, is we created an accelerator, a place where startup companies can get that mentorship, can start to grow their business, and then set up shop here in Whitby. They're getting capital to help their business grow. They're getting that mentorship so that they can be successful and grow that technology or innovation ecosystem here in our town, so that we can attract more people to our community, and we can attract more jobs to our community. So that was a big focus on the first term of council. When we saw a couple retirements, and Whitby, because of its continued growth, received another spot for regional council. I thought, let's give it a kick at the can again. I've learned a lot in terms of planning and development, economic development, jobs. So we really wanted to take it to the next level, and talk to a colleague of mine, Councillor Chris Leahy, and we decided to do it together, and we were successful in 2018. So it's been really good, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Like everything you put your mind to, as we have heard thus far, you have achieved it. If not at the first try, you keep going. And it's great, the number of changes that have been brought about in the town of Whitby since you have taken office at the different levels. So we have to find out more, because there is more. But before that, it's time for a short break. Welcome back to Spotlight. We are talking to Regional Councillor and Deputy Mayor of the town of Whitby, Mr. Steve Yamada. So this is great. We have come to your phase of life where you have become regional councillors. So what changes have happened since you took office?
Well, we are currently advocating for a full-service hospital here in the town of Whitby. Specifically in North Whitby, because if you're familiar with the town, Whitby encompasses the town of Brooklyn, Myrtle, Ashburn. So we feel with working with Lakeridge Health, and they're looking for a new site for a new full-service hospital, that Whitby is the best choice, because you've got coverage with the Ajax Pickering Hospital out in the western part of Durham. You've got Markham Stouffville. You've got Lakeridge and Oshawa. So we feel that with all the growth coming to North Whitby and Brooklyn, that this is going to be a great place. So we're advocating hard for the hospital. We feel that there's going to be great opportunity for collaboration with post-secondary education, for teaching, and so we're really pushing hard for that. We've invested $1 million into Durham College's expansion. Durham College does some amazing programs here in our community. I've seen their crane operation. I've seen the elevator program that they have that is unique to Durham College. So especially with the technology programs that they're advancing, we really feel that that's a great investment into our community, because we want to see that partnership with the post-secondary education, with the innovation economy that we're trying to create here in Whitby, so we can really advance that. So having a full service hospital in Whitby is really going to help. So that's something that I've been championing as deputy mayor, and working closely with the current mayor, Don Mitchell, who's done a really good job. One of our big things is to try to continue to redevelop our downtown core. So we've had this old fire hall site that's been sitting dormant for a number of years, that Brookfield has come in to take over, and they're developing a beautiful mixed-use property. So we're going to be really happy to see that change. Bringing people to downtown, I think, is going to give life to businesses, especially as they try to come back from the current pandemic. So we're looking at ways really to continue to revitalize our downtown and take care of those small businesses.
Amazing. I mean, now the viewers know who is behind all the great changes that they can see in the town of Whitby. So it's great to have you and the team work on it. At this point, I also
And you're right. It is a team. It is a team sport, so to speak. You know, when we all pull together and we're all working in the same direction, we see that success.
yes, the team and the community, you know, it's a give and take. I love the fact how you enlightened us about how you are also listening to the people and, you know, getting that feedback to keep working on the changes with the help of your team.
They're the
Now,
boss.
well said. Now, we know the current global climate with the focus on anti racism.
Mhm.
So, I wanted to kind of bring that point to the town of Whitby from your eyes. Like, even Whitby, as we can see, has been growing in terms of cultural diversity, and that is part of us, Canada. You know, that is what we are proud of, the cultural diversity in Canada. So, from your viewpoint, how is this issue with anti-racism in current climate relevant to the town of Whitby, and how is the town of Whitby, you know, promoting that cultural inclusion and diversity and working against racism?
Well, we're starting to see changes within the town of Whitby. We're starting to see more people of different ethnocultural backgrounds come to our town, and that's exciting, because you're starting to see the mosques, you're starting to see the masjid, or the gurdwaras, and that's really important because it adds a different layer, I feel, to a successful community when people of all types get to share into different culture and communities. So creating the newcomer bus tour, giving people the opportunity to share in the programs that the town of Whitby has to offer. But you know, I feel in this day and age, we have to do more. And for me, that is looking at, you know, not just being someone who isn't racist, but someone who champions anti-racism. And that's, to me, that next step further. So looking at our institutions, looking at our police force at the region of Durham. We had the chief in yesterday morning at our regional council meeting for about 2 hours, and he said, you know, we do have an issue of systemic racism, so that's something we have to look at, and how we do community policing, how we interact with our cultural groups, how police are using force when they're going into a situation. You know, making sure body cameras are there for police officers to use so that our community feels safe. You know, there was a study that was done just a little while ago during ride checks, and there was a group of police officers who didn't have the body cameras, and then there were a group of police officers who didn't. The people who went through the ride check with the officers with the body cameras felt safe. They felt better. They felt more confident, and they felt that it was a better experience with the police officers. And from a community aspect, we want to make sure that what happens in or what's been happening in the United States never happens in our country. Never happens. That people of all racial backgrounds have can trust the people who are tasked to serve and protect our community. So for me, it's looking at what other municipalities have been doing. I know the City of Toronto has a great report in terms of anti-Black racism, and looking at those best practices and seeing how we can apply that to the region of Durham, how we can apply that to the town of Whitby, so that people of different ethno backgrounds have that trust with their institutions, and we're able to work to eradicate systemic racism in our community.
Well, we are glad that the government officials are working together, and they are focusing on what's important and listening to the community so that we feel safe. Well, Councillor, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for enlightening us so much about what you have been doing with the town of Whitby. That's also very relevant to many of the other municipalities, and it's globally, it's very relevant. So we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today and enlighten our viewers.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure spending this time with you.
We wish you all the best, and we'll continue to follow your and your team's work in the town of Whitby. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was Regional Councillor and Deputy Mayor for the town of Whitby, Mr. Steve Yamada, who has given us more information about what's happening with the town of Whitby. Well, that's a wrap for this week's show. Thank you for watching us. Continue to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and write to us at spotlight@ethnicchannels.com. Until next week, this is Amitha signing off, encouraging you to be an active participant in your community.